We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. The Bengals with a home win. It felt weird walking out of Paycor Stadium today with a win after starting 0-4 at home, Mike. But the Bengals get a much needed win today.
Yeah, man, that was it was so reminiscent to me of the Eagles game last week, just with the roles reversed, where the first
Mm.
half was pretty competitive. The Bengals got a touchdown right before half, got the ball after halftime, scored again. Now they're up 14. They're up 2 scores. And then what's the next thing that happens? Raiders turnover, and they make it a 3-score game. Now, I think the main difference is the pick six, which to me, controversial take. I think the play call was fine. I think people hated that. Now
Oh,
my reasoning, they had 3-on-2 to that side, or 3-on-1 to that side. There was one defender, the one who made the pick six, to that side. So when you motion him out, I think he telegraphed a little bit when you have to make that motion. But you got to make that motion to make the swing pass, at least to get him out there quicker. It's just Yoshi missed the block,
okay.
because if Yoshi makes that block, the safety is, I think, 12 yards and like at the hash mark, with Chase Brown running up the sideline. I mean, that sounds like a first down to me, if not more. I mean, you got Chase Brown in space. We keep asking, get Chase Brown in space. Well, it's just execution. It's a little thing there, just the execution of make that block. And you don't have to make some crazy block in that situation. Just slow him down, get in his way. If he's going to run himself like that, if you can just get a hand on him, because when a guy crosses the line of scrimmage, they're free game. Like,
Yeah.
if you're worried about getting an ineligible downfield or illegal contact or offensive pass interference, whatever, the second they take a step forward, you should just drive at them. Just drive them. Just get your hands on him and try to push him somewhere, because anything within the line of scrimmage is fine as long as you don't hold. And holding would be a better outcome than what happened. But he took an outside step. I think Yoshi was just so worried about getting the leverage to get Chase Brown up the sideline that he ended up. It's kind of like when you talk about a guy that ran before he caught the ball. In this
Mhm.
case, in the block form, it's like he thought about the leverage before he just made the block. Like, make the block. That's the most important part of this. It's kind of like, yeah, catch the ball. That's the most important thing you could do right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, just execution on it is what killed it for me. I think everybody hated that. I don't even remember that call happening earlier in the game. Like, there were screen passes, but they're like bubbles, a flat screen, the fake flat screen that ended up being a touchdown, which I think they called because of how hard they jumped that other screen. But yeah, it was disappointing that that happened, because it also made Burrow and the starters play longer. They had to go back out there
Mhm.
until they were able to score. It kind of felt like they were going to keep him out there, though, but the way they came out after that too, even after the score, they went back out there again. But yeah, it was a great day, though. I think offensively, no complaints, other than that pass. I think my only other thought I had was just, it was one of those days, and you could kind of predict it could happen, because you didn't have Burton, you didn't have Higgins, you didn't have
Mhm.
a lot of guys. The offense felt a little tight. Felt I've talked about that before, where it just feels like there. And I looked at every Joe Burrow pass attempt. There was like 4 of them beyond 12 yards. It felt like about 12 yards was like a ceiling on it,
Mhm.
partially because of the pass protection. He knew he had Cody Ford on the left side. He knew he had a disadvantage with Max Crosby over Amarius Mims on his right side. The interior has been shaky all year. And then two, they just didn't really have any juice. They had Yoshi, they had Chase. Chase is going to get a double pretty much every attempt. I would be surprised if I saw a lot of singled up Chase reps in that, although he did drop the one he had down the sideline. So tough. It's tough to win that way, and they were able to put together a great offensive performance despite feeling like just it just felt claustrophobic. It felt like, oh my goodness, they just, everything's so tight, especially early in that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I thought, oh, or at least before the pick six, I was like, they'll move on, probably put Jake Browning out there just because Joe was taking a few hits that I didn't really like. I was a little nervous about.
Max.
Nothing against Max, because honestly, I will say this about Max Crosby. It was early on in the game, but it was a timeout, and Joe and Max were just chatting like Joe would normally do, probably with the opposing team. And they talked the whole entire timeout. and then Max just gently hit him on the helmet. And there were times when, and even Joe said after the game, the one hit when they were offsides and then Max took the hit and they had 2 penalties. He's like, look, that was a football. Like he was being a football player. There's nothing there. And I just thought there was times when Max probably could have had the extra shot on Joe Burrow and he just let up. Like he let up. Just we saw it, hugged him a couple times, and you could tell the respect that Max had on the other side. And obviously, we talked about it going into this game, and that was going to be one of my fears. Like, can he mess this game up? Will they move him around? What does he look like against Amarius? Cody Ford on the other side, and just overall, it kind of. I'm going to be honest with you. I get the Eagles vibe, like a flip flop. For me personally, and obviously it's different because it was a divisional game in the playoffs, but it gave me Bills vibes. I just felt really, even at halftime, even though it was a close game, I was like, nah, I feel like the Bengals are going to control this and they'll be fine and they'll win this game. And then they were getting the ball in the second half. So for me personally, it was good to see out of the offense. I know who they played. It was the Raiders, but this Raiders team has, they've kept it close with a few opponents, and obviously the roster looked a little bit different when they played the Ravens early on. But overall, I was really impressed with how the offense looked, and kind of my thing. And I know it got just a little too close in this, not even too close, but it was like you could imagine in your head like what could happen here. But just keeping your foot on the pedal is what I've always wanted them to do. Keep scoring, keep that lead, and I think Joe was in the game late because they wanted to get the 6th touchdown. You could tell after the game, Joe told the team, don't celebrate. We have Baltimore coming up. And everybody in the locker room, I know reporters said like 5 different players, hey, it's Baltimore. You want to keep your season on go? You got to be Baltimore. And it was just good to see offensively. Did you take anything away from how Joe was feeling after the game? Because I was so confused why he was mad.
I think he's just dialed in. I think people talked about the pick 6 making him mad, and I think it probably did. But I think what made him the most upset was the 3rd down opportunity that that Yosivas didn't come down with because Burrow left it short. I think his mistakes make him more mad than anything else. And yeah, I just think not playing that way makes him very frustrated. When he's not perfect, he's going to see things that he could have had played differently. So it wasn't a perfect day, even if it was a great day for this offense. And so there's always something to get better. Also, the team record, not great. So I'm sure that's also eating at him. And I'm sure he's also frustrated about everything else that's going on, that this offense can't fully function, whether it's injuries or off-field related. So I think there's a lot that goes into just he's probably not having the greatest time, even though the team had a great win. So I didn't take too much from it. What I did take was just, he's just locked in on like no celebration. Like he knows that they need to turn this around, I think is where he's at.
You could even tell when Jamar was walking off the field, it was serious. And I think Joe's message to the team is absolutely huge. It's a short week. You got to get this AFC North win. It's going to be a tough task. You're playing in Baltimore. Those games are normally pretty close, so we'll see what it looks like. But for the offense to get something going, and hopefully good injury news on T. Higgins, maybe he'll be good to go for that game. Maybe they said, let's wait a couple more days. He'll be good for Thursday Night Football. Hopefully good Orlando Brown Jr. news. And we'll see about Jermaine Burton. I'll talk about that towards the end of the podcast. But offensively, we got to shout out Chase Brown. They were going to be without Zach Moss today, and I thought, could you really use a little blocking help? And unfortunately, Eric Gall left the game. Hopefully he's okay, but obviously a lot of reports don't look super positive. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. But Chase Brown, 27 carries, 120 yards. It was nice to see a run game.
Yeah, the run game stunk for so long. And then Chase Brown, as the only running back to receive a carry, ended up taking 27 carries. And so he, if you've been listening long enough, my favorite stats for this are probably success rate. I just like seeing how successful these runs are, because putting yourself ahead of the chains is so important, especially when you face good pass rushers like Max Crosby. He had a 41% success rate, and that is above average. So I was okay with it. I mean, I think compared to where that was in the past couple of weeks, that's awesome, because they were the worst run game in the league the past 4 weeks. This week, above average. You'll take that. 27 carries, 120 yards. Nobody to spell him on that. Travion, the only player I remember, was getting railroaded in pass protection, sadly. Chase Brown also had a miss in pass pro. So the that part of the game was missed. Zach Moss was missed during this. So I hope it's not a lengthy injury for him, because it did affect the passing game a little bit. But yeah, I thought he played really well. And I think my favorite play from him was in the passing game on that out of structure touchdown, where he just was on the same page as Burrow. It's good to see a young player knows I'm going to break out, and I don't know their exact rules, but he's moving towards the back of the end zone. I don't know if somebody else is moving towards the front pylon, and catching the ball and keeping that foot in bounds was crazy. So he had a great day. And I think overall it wasn't just splash plays. He was down to down pretty efficient, and was able to keep the offense motoring and in good position.
All right, let's flip to the defensive side, because I want to do a little trade talk just in case, as we're recording this tonight. Defensively, this team, again, I know they were playing on the offensive side of the ball, but Brock Bowers was going to be a big factor going into this game. I know Jacoby Myers was actually getting started pretty good in the season, that he was going to be a possible threat in their passing game. I do know who the quarterback they were facing. Obviously, they didn't have a problem with him last year when he was playing for the Colts, but overall, defensively, how did you feel today?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you start talking about the defense without talking about Trey Hendrickson. 4 sacks, now leads the NFL, I believe, with 11 on the season. He's been crazy good since he got here. Last week, obviously, there was a disappointment against Fred Johnson, but I don't know if he did much against Colton Miller, but Colton Miller went out so early, I don't think it matters. And then Andres Pete was there. He was a guard for New Orleans. So I guess had a little bit of tackle versatility, maybe played it before. And then he went down too, so it ended up being a third string left tackle. And that guy, felt bad for him. Like, they weren't giving him chips. They weren't giving him real chips, at least. They had like a running back put a hand on Hendrickson just for him to get bulldozed. I felt bad for him. But yeah, what a day from Trey Hendrickson. Because this is what I expect when I see Trey Hendrickson go against a backup level offensive tackle. Is I expect, not that I expect 4 sacks, but I expect constant pressure, constant wins. Let's change. You got to change the game plan because of me type of performance. And that's what he did. Like, what he did was basically either change the game plan or I'm going to ruin your day. And they didn't change the game plan, so he ruined the day. 4 sacks, 10 pressures, I believe I saw from a quick, I think Next Gen Stats does their pressures right away, because it does by player tracking and rather than by watching and seeing if it affected the quarterback. But yeah, what a day from Trey Hendrickson. He blew everything up. And I do think that the other guys, they weren't terrible when you go across the other pass rushers. I thought Osai had the most run. I didn't see much. A little bit of pocket compressing. I never saw him really disengage and really affect the quarterback that way. It was interesting, though, because he went out there for pretty early on the first drive, and then he was there pretty early on the second drive. And I was like, oh, he's edge 3 right now. And I don't know if that was like a right before the trade deadline, let's give people an extended look type of deal, because that could be a surprise. If you are going to trade for an edge player rather than cut one, maybe you could trade Osai, because he would maybe move out of the rotation. Murphy did get in there. It was interesting. I thought he had one of his best rushes of the year right before halftime. It looked like, I didn't watch it a second time, but it looked like when he got the right tackle to open his hips, he used a hump move, which is like taking your inside arm. Reggie White did this. He made the move and just kind of like whacking that guy so that he goes outside and you can work inside. It was like instant pressure. I think he got a hit on the quarterback and the ball flew incomplete because the quarterback had to get rid of the ball. That was great. He got an extended run towards the very end of the game. I didn't see too much. I saw him go around the outside ones, maybe want to see where that was. Was that at like 12 yards where that's a loss, or was that like 9 yards where that should be a win, but there was no interior presence? I don't know. I thought McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins might have had his best pass rush day. He hasn't done much as a pass rusher, got a sack in this game, which you have to be close to quarterback to get a sack. I thought everybody did an okay job at least compressing the pocket too. Run defense was different. That especially early in that game was bad. The defensive line I thought was bad. First watch, I didn't think BJ Hill had a good game, and then he got hurt, sadly. So that was also something to watch. Rankins, that was his big chance to, like, hey, Sheldon, we paid you. You're going against a backup level guard. Go take him out. And he didn't. So maybe I want to watch again and see what happened, but like the preliminary look at that was he didn't do anything, and that's a little bit frustrating. This is a game you're paid to go win, similar to like the Hendrickson thing, except Rankins is a lower level player than Hendrickson, but I still expect you to win those matchups. Like maybe not I'm going to destroy your game plan type of performance, but just like I'm here type of like I'm gonna get some pressures and win this matchup more than not if I'm singled up. And I don't know if I saw that. So that's my quick pass rusher overview. I thought the corners got cooked by Jacoby Myers at times, but other than that, the coverage seemed okay. Mm-hmm. It's also bad quarterback tax. They have looked good the past 2 times they faced bad quarterbacks, and I don't consider Minshew Ritter to be a good quarterback. So I think it was another performance of like, were there guys open and the quarterback didn't get to them? That's possible. But I mean, as it stands, Desmond Ritter, felt bad for him too. I felt bad for every quarterback that was in there too, just because of the pressure coming from Trey and no adjustment being made. But yeah, they did a great job after that first drive. And I did see somewhere that the Raiders, I think, have scored touchdowns on like 5 of their 6 opening drives, which is crazy. And then they're just a terrible offense afterward. That's kind of what we watched. So that it tracks. I believe it. So they're good scripted plays.
Bengals get a win, 4-5 on the season. Huge game. Baltimore. I mean, this really could get the season back on track. You could have conversations of, hey, maybe even AFC North discussions of this team competing with Baltimore and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they're up there too. So huge game, short week for them. Offensively, defensively, we'll get into more of the tape on Tuesday. I want to talk about the trade talk just because we can talk now. And I hope we can come back on this podcast and say the Cincinnati Bengals made a move. And by the time our podcast comes out tomorrow morning, it'll be expired and they've already made this huge splash. But the Cincinnati Bengals, and look, some could say it's more PR. They want you to know we're making moves. We're on the phone. Diana Rossini over at The Athletic even said, one GM talking with the Bengals on Saturday morning said they are not flirting. They are serious about adding people to your defense. You see what Trey Hendrickson was able to do. You see when Trey Hendrickson is not on the field and what help they need. If you were the Cincinnati Bengals, and let's just focus on defense right now, but I think the topic of maybe adding another running back if Zach Moss is going to be out for multiple weeks will be something that they have an interest in. Eric All is going to possibly be out to be determined what his injury is. But if you're looking at the defensive side, you're hearing some of these names with the Cincinnati Bengals having a connection. Are you going to be surprised? And do you think they'll make a huge difference?
I wouldn't be surprised if a move was made, which is way different than if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, like, would you be surprised if a move made? I'd be like, yeah. Like, they don't make moves. They've made 2 trades for players in the past 60 years during the season. But now I wouldn't be that surprised because of the reporting. I think the Ojulari thing's probably real. I think that's one that's like you're looking at. And that's one thing I kind of referenced when I talked about thinking, just kind of pondering why was Osai out there so much early in this game. And it was kind of like, well, if they do trade for Ojulari, you're going to have to cut an edge. And I don't know if they want to cut, Cedric Johnson, who's a long deal versus, Joseph Osai, who has 1 year left. It might be a little easier to be able to trade him away and get some type of compensation. And we also know how the Bengals work. They're like, well, we're not in the process of making teams better, blah, blah, blah. And they've really valued
Mulligetta guy.
That is true. It's Mulligetta guy. But I was just thinking, like, they hate getting rid of these day 3 draft picks. Well, one way to get rid of the day 3 draft pick is to get rid of one for Ojulari, a 4th, a 5th, whatever, and then get a 6th or a 7th back from Osai. You could send them somewhere. So I think that's a possibility. Probably not to the same team. I don't know why you would just swap those players unless the Giants really wanted them. But that is something I was thinking of. I think that's a real one. I wonder if Jack Jones is in their consideration because they just love these players that play well. And he got the pick 6, and he's been in the rumors as well. I saw somebody say Greg Newsome for the Browns. I just don't see an interdivision trade happening. But my goodness, that guy has killed the Bengals. So like that's another one that I would at least check. Just call in, see what's happening. He'd probably be the best corner on the team. I don't think I would say the same about Jack Jones. Where I think he would be a little bit more of the same, probably of like inconsistent, but has some potential, is interesting. We will see. A lot of this, I think running back, I don't think they would make a trade. Do you? I think they'd rather sign like an Evan Hall off of a practice squad versus make a trade for a guy.
Yeah, I think they're focusing on defense. And I'll say this about Diana Rossini and Jeremy Fowler, because Jeremy Fowler, he didn't say he actually said the Bengals after the game that they're aggressive. And Jeremy Fowler and Diana Rossini are very connected to the Bengals front office. So this is coming from the Bengals front office, what is getting put out there. Look, I hope it's not we tried, it didn't work out, but I think winning this game the way you did, you see this defense and what Trey Hendrickson can do, get him some help, get a guy that's young, you can extend immediately and have that versus Joseph Asai walking next year. I think that's a perfect opportunity on the defensive side. And I think they need cornerback help. If you want to make a run right now and you're 4-5 on the season, you have a huge week, short week, which you got to make that trade right away because deadline's Tuesday. You want to get them in. They're going to have practice more than likely tomorrow. And you get ready for Baltimore. I think that would be absolutely huge. So for me, I think it's going to be cornerback, and they'll go defensive line, an
You
edge.
think you think they're trading for both? You said.
I think both.
Wow. Yeah.
And look,
I think
maybe
it
I'm too
could.
optimistic about it, but I think they need both positions right now. And I think you call the Carolina Panthers too.
Yeah, Clowney. I think the one thing I've seen with the Ojulari thing that has me questioning it just a tiny bit is like he doesn't fit what they normally look for in the defensive end. They normally look for big hulking guys like Clowney, like Arden Key from the Titans as another guy that you could point to and be like, could trade for him. They know the Titans head coach, so maybe give him a call, see if he's willing to part with him. Maybe he wants Osai. Maybe that's where you could make some type of swap there too. Maybe Callahan wouldn't mind having Osai on his team. But yeah, I think those make sense. Corner is difficult. Like you get to the big names, and you talk about like Max Crosby, or you talk about, I think, JC Horn would be another guy that's not a small fish. I think they're not looking at those, if I had to guess. When you've made two trades in your history, you're going to double that, hopefully, possibly, by Tuesday. I think it starts small. I don't think you start by going after it. And I also think they're just not a good enough team to really go after a giant fish, and we'll see. But yeah, do you extend an Ojulari immediately? I get a little bit worried about doing that just because some of the underlying metrics aren't great. And I know when I watched the Bengals game, his sacks came mostly on unblocked plays. So those two things have me a little bit like trepidation. I think he's a solid player, but I wonder if do you bring him in and give him some extension that treats him like he's a good player? And I just like to see it in the scheme first, just because they don't usually deal with these types of guys. Is Lou or whoever going to get a little fed up with he's small and he's not able to hold the point of attack on every play? I don't know. So I was a little bit trepidation. I'm saying don't make the trade. I'm saying make the trade, but I think I would just let's see him play a couple games before the extension, just to make sure it all fits and works out. Because I think of that Dolphins trade. Now this is for a higher level player probably, and Bradley Chubb. They extended him immediately, and I was kind of it was because they felt like they had to. I don't know, because you could make that trade and not make the extension. Just look at what the Rams did to win the Super Bowl. They traded for Von Miller, didn't extend him, won the Super Bowl, let him walk. And that's been a good decision from them in every aspect of that. The trade won them the Super Bowl, and then he wasn't as good when he walked. So then injury related too. But so I think I'd have a little bit of patience on the extension, but I think trading for either one of those positions is a great idea. I still think defensive tackle, I don't know why we aren't talking about it. The BJ Hill injury, if that's anything more than a week or two, that could be huge. I think defensive tackle, and Rankin's not doing anything. That's a position I'm very worried about, even with two rookies there, because you are one injury away from probably calling up Tufele again. And I don't know if you want to be there.
Yeah. Who am I kidding? They're not going to trade and extend a player in season. They're going to
that's true too.
I need to slow down over here. But it would be awesome. And I really do hope this isn't the Bengals just trying to get that news out there and say, look, we're being aggressive. We're trying. I think you look at what your defense is. Again, playing against the Raiders probably not a good comparison, but hey, they do have playmakers too, outside of the quarterback. And I think you add guys. You showed Trey Hendrickson, who I hope they extend in the offseason. We want to add a younger guy. We want to add someone who could possibly be here multi-years, to be determined if that happens. But the trade deadline is on Tuesday, so we'll see if the Cincinnati Bengals do that. Is there anything you want to say about the game before I mention one quick thing?
No, I just think it's funny that election day is the same day as trade deadline day. That's just funny to me. Of
The
like,
bad day
it's
on the
down to the
internet.
wire. Or like, I'm staring at the trade deadline. My wife's like staring at the election results. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe this. She's like, me too. We're like looking at two different things.
No, I did
But
say that. I was leaving the game and I said, "Man, Tuesday's such a big day. It's trade deadline." And I was like, "Oh, crap." It's we won't even get into that, but that is Tuesday. Huge day all around America and for sports fans. But when I mentioned Jermaine Burton, I actually thought about it before the game started. We had talked about it on Thursday's podcast, and you had mentioned something like there are like five other things to worry about with the Cincinnati Bengals
yeah,
versus Jermaine Burton. And I agree with you. And I thought, you know what? When Mike and I record after the game, I'm so glad they won the way they did. There was so much to talk about. Joe Burrow's playing at MVP level without his wide receiver number 2, wide receiver number 4, his left tackle out there, and a running back number 2. And he was so impressive and almost had 6 or 7 touchdowns on the day. But I thought we've got to mention it because it was the story. And Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow talked about it after the game, and I felt like they answered it at a very professional level. Joe talked about being a rookie and obviously the differences, and Zach's like, we're not giving up on the guy. But I think it's easy to get, I know it's so easy for everybody to get upset at the front office, Zach Taylor, the coaching and everything like that, kind of going into this game. It was like, if Burton doesn't play, I'm over it. Even if he
call
misses
for
a
Burton.
even if he misses a meeting or he's not at practice. I think that was very telling on what Zach Taylor did, was saying like, no, 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 you're not going to play if you're not at this practice, this walkthrough. It's a Saturday
Walkthrough.
walkthrough. I know there were a lot of reports. Hey, the Bengals didn't report it. They have a Saturday walkthrough before every game. Media is not there. They do not
Mm-hmm.
offer an injury report for that. So it is very easy. It is a walkthrough. And Jermaine Burton wasn't there. And I'll just say this about him. I hope this is a learning experience because I was really excited that the Bengals took a chance on him. Obviously, there was plenty to talk about on draft night, but they took a chance and they said, look, we have this talent. I don't know, you could say second round talent in round 3. I know a lot of people want to say round 1, but I'll say second round talent in round 3. Get a wide receiver that could have a lot of potential, maybe be your wide receiver 3. Not ready to put him in the 2 category right now. But it's been disappointing so far from Jermaine
Yeah.
Burton because this was going to be a great day for you. You know, not T. Higgins is sideline. You could really step up and be that extra guy because Yoshi was struggling, and obviously Mike Gesicki continues to be a big part of this offense. And I'll
Wide
just say,
receiver. That's the real wide receiver 3, by the way. I think
I
it's
keep
just
saying
Gesicki.
it. I keep saying it, but I will say this: I'm just disappointed, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really unfortunate for Jermaine Burton, and I hope he grows out of it quickly.
At some point, you blame the player. I understand the idea of like, this coaching staff, this front office, they're not doing this, they're not playing, and they're not playing. If you have played football, you know what a walkthrough is and it's what it sounds like. You show up, you basically just go through the motions of the game plan. Apparently, according to James Rapine, it was a game plan that featured Burton. Like, this was not only just an opportunity for him to just go out there because of who was missing, but they put plays in for Burton in this game plan. Like, hey, you're going to have a big day. And then he just didn't show up. It's not like there was some big, heavy, difficult thing he had to do. He had to just show up. And he's 23 years old. I don't think you need to baby him this much. I think at some point you could take him to, it's just the quote. It's, you took the horse to the water. You've tried, listen to the quotes all week. Like, he's earned more playing time. He's earned this. The game plan was apparently going to feature him. They're trying to do everything to get him locked in, and you just no call, no show the walkthrough. No matter what job you have, you're going to face consequences for a no call, no show. You have to show up. You just have to show up, and missed a huge opportunity because I'm going to guess T. Higgins is back after this. And I'm also going to guess that they're rather just going to go with Mike Gesicki as a guy they'd feature over Burton. Burton might still be able to, get some plays where he takes the top off the defense, but this was an opportunity for him to really show everybody what he's capable of, and he missed it. And to me, I think you could blame a tiny bit of like before this, but after seeing the report, like, this is just squarely on him. It's just on, and you hope that he turns it around. And because Tyler Boyd had this issue his first 2 years where he wasn't like locked in, and then something clicked. Year 3, working with AJ Green, he became 1,000-yard receiver. You might just have to take this year as that, and you hope it's quicker, that he's able to get his head on right, that he's able to get, mature. It was in your interview. It was like TJ said, Everybody matures at
People
different
were mad at
levels.
me about it, but I'm just saying he talked him
I
up.
don't.
He said,
Yep. There's a cult. There's like this weird cult of like the offense isn't really that bad. The offense is
"No,
actually good. So it's not that big of an issue that they're not the mismanaging, if you want to call it that. Like the defense is the issue to this team. That's why they're not doing well, record wise. But yeah, I'm at the point where I'm like, he's gotta lock in. He's gotta be in there and trying to perform, and he hasn't. So turn it around. You hope it's this year. You hope this is like talk about like those rock bottom. I was like, maybe this is your rock bottom. You got healthy scratch in a game you were about to be featured in, and if he believes in himself, he probably thinks he was about to have like 100 yards and a touchdown type of performance. But he didn't show up. He missed out, and just lock in. Be a professional. You're 23 years old. This isn't a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old like real young kid. This is a guy that I know what I was like at 23. I had a full-time job. I
yeah,
was working. There was no more college life. It was like that was the year I grew up and became full-time workforce. So I don't know. People mature at different rates. Hopefully it's soon.
yeah." I'll make one quick comment, then we'll wrap up. But he had said earlier in the week when the media was talking to him, there's full context on it, but he's like, "Look, I can't put myself in the game
Mm-hmm.
when asking about those, but you can take yourself out of it really quickly." And Joe Burrow's not going to deal with any of that. I know there was a video at the end of the game. I'm not sure what Joe said to Jermaine after towards the end of the game, but he went over to the bench where Jermaine was. And if you're Joe Burrow, you're disappointed. If you're Jamar Chase, you're disappointed. Two of those guys spoke to the media this week, and they said, growing confidence, we're really working on that dialogue. And those people who are veterans on your team are speaking up for you this week. And this is how you repay them on a Saturday walkthrough. It is disappointing. I agree with you. You are a rookie. I get it, but you got to grow up, or this league won't miss you.
A lot of
They won't.
talented players have lost an entire career because of this.
Yep.
So you got to turn around. Just think of like Justin Blackman, first round receiver, same issue, and he never grew up. It just is what it is. Like you have to do it before it gets too late.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about the tape going back and in this offense, but I'm excited to talk about a win on Tuesday. It's a short week because we're going to talk about Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football. It's kind of deja vu where we were this time last year when it comes to Thursday Night Football in November. But a must win, I would say, for the AFC North for the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike will have plenty over on Bengals Talk. Mike, do you know what's going to be up there?
I know it'll have to be quick, but I don't know exactly what's going on because I already did my Trey Hendrickson article, so I can't do another one on his 4 sacks.
Maybe Chase Brown. I don't know. But every
Chase
time a player,
Brown could be a Gesicki, maybe. Look into that. Just like, oh yeah, that not a bad idea. Gesicki, wide receiver 3. Should write the article.
do it. Make sure you check Mike out over on Twitter, Bengals_Sams. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. Thank you for listening too. It's always game day in Cincinnati.